years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me.
People have no idea that there's two different men. That there's the person, Robert, there's the persona, R. Kelly.
My mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes.
Yo, word on the street is Robert stepped out those gates and chaos popped off instantly. He barely touched fresh air before the noise hit him from every side, loud and messy like the city had been waiting all day. Now, buckle up, because what really went down the second those jail doors opened feels like a whole drama series. February 25th, 2019 turned into a headline moment when Robert Kelly walked out after about 4 days in Cook County Jail, facing serious state charges tied to multiple people. A woman from suburban Chicago came through and dropped a $100,000 bond, and just like that, he was out for the moment. Around 5:25 in the evening, those doors cracked open and freedom hit, at least for now. But what he did next...
What are the lies that you're hearing that disturb you most?
Oh my God, all of them. That little girl's trapped in the basement.
That whole sit down. That's the part the internet refuses to forget. He slid off in a black van, and not even 30 minutes later, that same van rolled up to the famous rock and roll McDonald's in Chicago's River North. Out of all places, that's where he chose to land. He hopped out like it was a casual day, grabbed some chicken nuggets and a Big Mac, and started moving like he was at a fan event, signing autographs, shaking hands, posing for selfies like nothing serious was hanging over him. One fan even shouted, "I love you!" And he smiled and waved back like it was all good. But trust, that McDonald's stop, that wasn't even the wildest part of the story. Then his crew pulled up to Big's mansion, this high-end cigar lounge sitting deep in the flashy Gold Coast. While everything in his real life was crashing down outside, he was inside laid back, puffing cigars like nothing could touch him. That whole run, from jail to fast food to...
They was describing Lucifer. I'm not Lucifer. I'm a man. I make mistakes.
But it didn't stop there. Months later, Easter Sunday, April 21st, 2019, TMZ caught him right outside his Trump Tower condo in Chicago. Robert was posted next to a Rolls Royce, holding a massive cigar, looking like he stepped straight out of a crime movie. He was puffing heavy, talking on his phone, acting like the pressure wasn't even real. Headlines were quick to point out how calm he looked, almost too calm. With legal issues stacking up and serious accusations surrounding him, he still carried himself like he was on some never-ending vacation. Around that same time, he sat down with Gayle King for that now infamous CBS interview, and things got intense real fast. When she asked about the allegations, he didn't hold back at all. He started raising his voice, throwing his hands around, and pushing back hard against how he was being portrayed. That interview showed a side of him people couldn't ignore. Loud, emotional, and completely fired up. Real talk. That wild contrast is exactly why people can't stop replaying those clips. 1 minute he's on national TV getting emotional, and the next he's casually grabbing a Big Mac like it's just another day. That switch up hits hard, and years later it still has people talking.
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive. But I'm alive. I need help.
Fast forward, and all those flashy moments, the autographs, the oversized cigars, the Rolls Royce, now clash heavy with the reality of him sitting in federal prison with a projected release way out in 2045. That gap between image and reality, it's straight up fuel for viral content across TikTok, Instagram Reels, X, and Facebook. And then you got misinformation flying everywhere. Old clips keep getting reposted with captions claiming he's been released, escaped, or even pardoned. It got so out of hand that PolitiFact had to step in back in 2024 just to confirm he's still locked up, and that those 2019 bail videos were being reused with misleading claims. Some edits go even further, throwing in fake subtitles or layering the footage with AI-generated audio to push a whole different story. That Trump Tower cigar clip especially keeps popping up, often paired with other viral cigar videos for laughs. Even as recent as April 2026, people on X still joke about it anytime someone shows up smoking a huge cigar. And that McDonald's footage, it hits a different nerve online, especially since reports and documentaries mentioned he would approach underage individuals at certain locations. So when early 2026 rumors started spreading about a December 21st, 2045 release date, social media didn't just react, it exploded with wild takes and non-stop chatter. Instagram Reels and TikToks kept dragging those old 2019 cigar lounge clips back into the spotlight, slapping captions on them like, This was his last time free, and people ran with it fast. Some posts even pushed straight-up false early release claims, and fact-checkers had to jump in quick to shut it all down before it spread even further.
I need somebody to help me not have a big heart.
Now let's get into the legal grind, because behind all that viral noise, things were getting serious. Robert's legal team kept pushing from every angle, trying to find any crack in the system. Attorneys like Jennifer Bonjean and Bo Binal worked through every possible move, running the full playbook to challenge what was coming at him. The New York conviction in 2021 hit heavy, 30 years tied to racketeering and trafficking charges. Then Chicago followed in 2022, stacking on another 20 years related to child exploitation material, with part of that time running back to back. When you add it up, it lands around 31 years total, locking in a projected release date of December 21st, 2045. That puts him close to 79 years old when that day comes.
Oh, my niece on the 26-minute tape.
There's a difference between R. Kelly and Robert. R. Kelly's this fun, laughing, loving guy. But Robert is the devil,
The appeals kept climbing, but the results didn't shift. On February 12, 2025, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the New York conviction, and that 30-year sentence, making it clear they found no solid grounds to overturn it. They pointed directly to how he used his fame over decades to take advantage of others. The Seventh Circuit backed the Chicago conviction too, closing that door as well. Then came the final reach. The Supreme Court, October 2024, denied. May 2025, petition denied again. And by June 23, 2025, the Supreme Court refused to hear it once more, effectively shutting down the road for direct appeals and sealing the outcome. Robert's stance didn't really switch up. He had already framed himself like the victim back in that earlier interview, and that same energy kept showing up. But behind the scenes, his legal team stayed aggressive, pushing move after move, trying to shake the case loose. In August 2025, they filed a motion aiming to disqualify the entire U.S. Attorney's Office from handling things. Judge Martha Picold shut that down fast, saying it lacked real justification and didn't meet the high legal bar. She even called the request extreme, which says a lot. Then came the most shocking play in June 2025. The team dropped an emergency motion claiming 3 Bureau of Prisons officials were involved in a murder-for-hire plot.
I could lend my voice to something that would highlight these young people who have been hurt.
R. Kelly has brought so much pain to so many people, and he should be ashamed of himself.
Targeting Robert. According to the filing, they alleged an inmate tied to a white supremacist gang was being recruited to carry it out. They also claimed witness tampering and misuse of attorney-client information, pushing the situation into even more serious territory. Attorney Bo Binal took it public with a press conference, framing Robert as someone exposing corruption, even drawing comparisons to issues that political figures have talked about. They went as far as publicly calling on President Trump for clemency, trying to skip the usual process entirely. But that push didn't land. Judge Harry Leinenweber denied it, pointing out he didn't even have jurisdiction since Robert is incarcerated in North Carolina, not Chicago. Prosecutors fired back, calling those claims fanciful and not grounded in reality. And when you look back at that Gayle King interview moment, it lines up with the same pattern. Strong denials, emotional reactions, and that repeated claim of being targeted. Even the sentence itself keeps people divided. Some advocates argue 30 years is too low considering the long timeline and number of people involved, including individuals who were underage. Others say 30 years is too harsh for non-homicide charges and question using racketeering laws on a single artist instead of a larger organization. Judges, though,
And people have no idea that this man just beat me on the bus.
pointed to a pattern stretching over decades, describing it as calculated and showing a serious disregard for others. By mid-February 2026, the situation still had people debating heavy with no clear agreement in sight. Robert ended up right back in trouble, landing in solitary confinement, what federal facilities call the Special Housing Unit at FCY Butner Medium 1. The whole situation kicked off after a cell search connected to his cellmate, who got caught with a contraband phone. That search led officers to Robert's notebook, and inside it, a personal phone number tied to a retired prison official, a former warden. Now here's where it gets complicated. On the surface, it didn't look like some secret backdoor deal. Robert had reportedly been part of a prison mentoring program that this official used to oversee before retiring. The story goes that the former warden gave him that number for advice related to the program. Attorney Bo Benal pushed that angle hard, saying the contact was legit and not suspicious. But prison officials didn't see it that way at all. Having personal contact info for a retired official, especially showing up during a search involving a contraband phone, set off alarms fast. They treated it like a potential security issue and moved quickly, launching an internal investigation. As a precaution, Robert was placed straight into the SHU while they sorted it out, and those conditions hit hard. According to his attorney, inmates in the SHU spent around 23 hours a day locked in their cells with barely any access to calls, visits, commissary, or programs. Robert lost all of that during his time there, staying isolated for about 2 weeks, which his team described as brutal. That emotional moment from the Gayle King interview, when he said, "I need help," started circulating again during this stretch, adding even more attention to the situation. By mid-March 2026, the internal review wrapped up, and officials reported no wrongdoing tied to Robert. He was moved back into the general population, while his attorney argued the extended isolation had no solid basis and wasn't fair. The Bureau of Prisons stayed quiet on the whole situation, which is pretty standard when it comes to internal security issues. But online, it turned into pure chaos real fast. The Free R. Kelly crowd went all the way off, flooding timelines with outrage and wild conspiracy claims about him being targeted. You had people saying things like, they always find a reason to mess with him, and pushing ideas that this was retaliation meant to mess up his legal moves. On the other side, critics and advocates weren't buying any of that. Their reactions ranged from straight indifference to sharp sarcasm, with many pointing back to the seriousness of the case and saying none of this was surprising. That split reaction just kept the noise going louder and louder across social media. And don't forget, Robert himself had hinted in past interviews that he needed more than just legal help, which only added more fuel to the conversation. But here's the thing. This February 2026 solitary situation wasn't even his first time dealing with prison drama. Not even close. Life behind those walls has been anything but quiet. We're talking incidents, tension, and moments that sound like they came straight out of a movie script. Since July 2019, Robert Kelly has been in continuous federal custody, and the stories coming out of that time paint a picture full of conflict, pressure, and nonstop chaos that keeps unfolding. He first landed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in downtown Chicago, and the tension kicked off almost immediately. Not long after arriving, Robert ended up in the SHU again. His legal team said it didn't make sense, claiming there was no real reason for it, but reports told a different story. Word was, he actually asked for protective housing because he feared other inmates. From that angle, solitary wasn't just punishment, it looked more like a move for safety, especially considering the serious charges hanging over him. By September 2019, attorney Stephen Greenberg confirmed Robert had been moved out of the SHU, either back into general population or placed with a cellmate. Prosecutors later backed that up in court filings, pointing out he did have a cellmate for a period of time, pushing back against claims that he was stuck in isolation unfairly for too long. So even before any verdict came down, things inside were already getting complicated. At the same time, his legal team was shaping a narrative for the public, while official records started telling a more detailed version of events. Then August 2020 hit, and that's when things turned physical in a major way. Robert made headlines after being attacked inside his cell at MCC Chicago. Reports said he was either asleep or sitting on his bed when another inmate, Jeremiah Shane Farmer, came in and assaulted him. Farmer, who was already serving a life sentence for serious violent crimes, reportedly struck Robert multiple times in the head and body before guards rushed in. One officer even used pepper spray to stop it, bringing a chaotic and dangerous moment under control. When verbal commands didn't work, things escalated fast. Robert ended up with cuts, bruises, and minor injuries, but nothing life-threatening, all things considered. Still, the situation was serious enough to raise major concerns about safety inside. The attack happened during lockdown conditions at the facility, and some reports suggested the other inmates' frustration had been building up. There were constant lockdowns tied to protests outside over Robert's case, mixed with strict COVID-19 restrictions that were already putting pressure on inmates. Inside those walls, everything was tense, and situations could flip in seconds. After the assault, Robert was moved back into the SHU for protection. His attorneys, Tom Farinella, Doug Anton, and Stephen Greenberg, quickly pushed for his release on bail, arguing the facility couldn't guarantee his safety anymore. They pointed to the attack as proof that keeping him there came with real risks. Then the story took another sharp turn. The inmate involved, Jeremiah Shane Farmer, filed a handwritten motion in court making serious claims. He alleged that staff at the facility basically allowed the attack to happen, even suggesting they encouraged it to bring attention to his own separate case. According to him, guards were aware and didn't step in right away. Officials and prosecutors strongly rejected those claims, calling them unfounded and not backed by evidence. Farmer didn't face new charges specifically for that assault, largely because he was already serving a life sentence. At that time, MCC Chicago was dealing with major internal problems: violence, staffing shortages, and harsh conditions that were already under scrutiny and eventually led to parts of the facility being shut down. Robert's legal team leaned heavily on this incident in repeated bail requests, but every single attempt was denied. The whole situation sparked a loud debate, some people arguing Robert was getting special treatment, while others said the opposite, that he was actually underprotected given the nature of his crimes and the level of risk inside federal custody. That split opinion kept the conversation heated everywhere online. By early 2023, after his sentencing process wrapped up, Robert was transferred to FCI Butner Medium 1 in North Carolina, a medium security facility that holds many inmates convicted of serious offenses. That move set the stage for the next major incident that unfolded in June 2025. On June 10th, 2025, things escalated again. Right after his legal team filed an emergency motion requesting temporary furlough or home confinement, Robert was placed into the special housing unit. The motion itself made explosive claims, alleging a murder-for-hire plot involving Bureau of Prisons officials who supposedly recruited an inmate tied to a white supremacist group to target him. It also referenced alleged witness intimidation and misuse of privileged attorney-client information involving a cellmate. His attorneys argued that putting him in the SHU right after filing that motion looked retaliatory, adding even more tension to an already volatile situation. Then just days later, around June 12th and 13th, his legal team made another serious allegation. They claimed prison staff administered what they described as an excessive dose of prescribed anxiety and sleep medication. According to their account, Robert collapsed, crawled toward his cell door, and lost consciousness before being rushed out. He was transported by ambulance to Duke University Hospital in Durham, North Carolina, where doctors treated him for multiple complications, including blood clots in his lungs. He reportedly stayed hospitalized for around 2 days before being discharged back into custody. The legal team went even further, alleging that Robert was removed from the hospital against medical advice and even at gunpoint before he could finish necessary treatment, then sent straight back into solitary confinement. That claim immediately escalated the intensity of the entire situation. During this period, Robert reportedly refused certain prison meals, citing fears of possible poisoning, and even drew comparisons between his situation and Jeffrey Epstein's death in custody. He suggested he would only feel safe either in his regular cell environment or under conditions he trusted more, which added even more attention to the case. Real talk. This entire chain of events became the backbone of additional filings attached to the emergency motion. Attorney Bo Binal held press appearances framing the situation as part of a larger pattern of alleged corruption and targeting. The legal team also made a public appeal to President Trump, describing him as the only figure they believed could intervene against what they called systemic abuse in high-profile prosecutions. They also claimed to have contact with unnamed individuals connected to Trump's circle and pushed for a direct conversation, though no formal clemency petition was filed through standard legal channels at that stage. By June 19th and 20th, 2025, Judge Pay Loke denied the request for release, citing lack of jurisdiction tied to the North Carolina facility and finding no legal grounds to grant relief. Prosecutors strongly rejected the allegations, calling them fanciful and deeply unserious, and even argued that the claims undermined the seriousness of the underlying victim harm. A planned hearing was ultimately canceled. Prison officials and Bureau of Prison sources described the hospitalization as routine medical treatment rather than any intentional overdose event. And even with all this unfolding, reports suggested Robert was still involved in music activity behind the scenes, despite everything going on around him. Prison walls. TMZ reported back in March 2025 that Robert was still singing during a podcast-style interview recorded from inside custody, keeping his music presence alive in a strange way. Even more surprising, Footage later surfaced online showing him performing older songs for fellow inmates while his legal team was simultaneously filing emergency motions claiming his safety was at risk. That contrast hit people hard. One side of the story showing music and performance still happening, while the other side was packed with legal filings, court claims, and constant disputes over conditions inside. Across all these incidents, a few patterns kept repeating. His legal team consistently described SHU placements as punitive, arguing they were part of broader plots or inhumane treatment used to justify release attempts, though none of those motions succeeded. On the other side, the Bureau of Prisons and prosecutors repeatedly pushed back, describing the housing decisions as standard procedure tied to security and investigation protocols. There are no widely documented records showing long-term disciplinary SHU placements for direct infractions like fighting or contraband possession attributed to Robert himself. Instead, his high-profile status as a celebrity inmate facing serious charges appears to have influenced more frequent protective or administrative housing decisions. The 2020 MCC Chicago assault remains the most clearly documented physical incident involving him inside prison, with no other confirmed major inmate-on-inmate attacks reported against him after that point. Most of his SHU time appears to fall into three main categories: early protective custody decisions in 2019, investigative and administrative placements like the 2026 notebook and phone number incident, and later claims tied to legal motions and alleged retaliation concerns in 2025. The June 2025 hospitalization in particular sparked strong reactions online, splitting audiences sharply and fueling ongoing debate across social media platforms about what was actually happening behind the scenes. Supporters saw all of this as proof of targeted harm and corruption inside the federal system, pointing to the SHU placements, hospital claims, and constant motion battles as part of a bigger pattern. Skeptics, though, dismissed it as exaggerated storytelling designed to strengthen release efforts after his appeals had already been exhausted in the higher courts. That split view kept the narrative extremely divided online. This entire storyline also fed directly into ongoing post-conviction filings connected to attempts for a new trial in the Chicago case. The legal fight didn't slow down. It just shifted into new arguments built around alleged misconduct and prison conditions. It's also worth noting that the facilities involved weren't free from their own documented issues. MCC Chicago had a known history of problems including violence, drug activity, and COVID-19 related restrictions during the time Robert was housed there, and it eventually faced partial closure. FCI Butner has also been mentioned in reports over broader concerns about medical response and housing conditions separate from any single inmate case. So while his legal team framed events as targeted, some of the underlying issues were already being flagged system-wide. The June 2025 incident added even more dramatic claims into the filings. Beyond the alleged murder-for-hire plot and overdose accusations, his attorneys claimed Bureau of Prisons officials improperly accessed attorney-client privileged communications through a cellmate. They also alleged witness intimidation attempts and argued the overall situation amounted to constitutional violations, including claims of cruel and unusual punishment. When Judge Wilkie canceled the planned hearing and denied the motion, it marked another setback for that specific emergency push. Still, Robert's legal team announced they would pursue a motion to vacate the Chicago convictions, citing what they described as newly discovered evidence tied to these alleged incidents. By late 2025, extensions were granted for responses in the Chicago case, pushing key deadlines into early 2026, while claims about threats to his safety continued to be raised in filings. Solitary confinement issues and medical neglect continued to appear in court filings, but none of it led to any change in custody status. Courts consistently ruled that the claims lacked sufficient evidence or were outside their jurisdiction, while the Bureau of Prisons stayed mostly silent, citing security and privacy rules whenever allegations of plots or mistreatment came up. The projected release date remained firmly set at December 21st, 2045. Emergency motions kept getting denied, appeals kept getting upheld, and the system moved forward without any major shifts to his sentence. But the bigger question always circles back to how he ended up here in the first place. The case behind his conviction stretches back decades. Long before the prison filings and emergency motions, Robert Sylvester Kelly, born in 1967 on Chicago's South Side, rose to massive fame as one of R&B's biggest stars, with hits like I Believe I Can Fly in Ignition, remix, earning awards, and global recognition. However, alongside that success, allegations of misconduct began surfacing in the early 1990s and continued for years. One of the earliest controversies involved claims about an alleged marriage involving a teenager, which was later annulled, and which became part of broader testimony and reporting in later legal proceedings. Over time, multiple allegations and civil and criminal cases accumulated, ultimately forming the foundation of the prosecutions that followed years later. A former tour manager, Demetrius Smith, later testified that he helped arrange a falsified identification document listing Aaliyah as an adult, involving a payment to a state worker. That claim became one of the early controversial points that fueled later lawsuits and investigations. By 1996, additional allegations surfaced from multiple civil claims involving accusations of inappropriate relationships with underage individuals. More lawsuits followed through the late 1990s and early 2000s, with families continuing to bring forward accusations that kept the situation in the public eye. In 2002, authorities also investigated a widely circulated video that became central to a major criminal case in Illinois. Robert was later charged with multiple counts related to the allegations tied to that footage. However, in the 2008 trial in Chicago, he was acquitted on all counts after key witnesses did not testify in court. The defense challenged identification and reliability issues surrounding the evidence, which played a major role in the verdict. That acquittal allowed him to continue his career for years afterward, though controversy never fully disappeared. A key figure known as Sparkle later testified in connection with the case, stating that she believed the individual in the video was her niece. The case also led to long-standing personal and family conflict, with reports of strained relationships following the proceedings. Behind the legal case, major outlets like the Chicago Sun-Times had been following Robert's controversies for years, and reporter Kathy Chaney even joined Sparkle on Windy City Live to help explain the situation to the public. That coverage helped push the story deeper into mainstream conversation. The allegations, which had circulated for years, gained major momentum during the rise of the Me Too movement in 2017 and 2018. Several women publicly shared accounts of alleged coercion, manipulation, and abusive behavior, while former associates made additional claims about how people were reportedly recruited and brought into his circle. Things reached a breaking point in January 2019 with the release of the Lifetime docu-series Surviving R. Kelly, executive produced by Dream Hampton. The 6-part series featured interviews with multiple accusers, describing what they characterized as a controlling and restrictive environment surrounding him. The documentary also highlighted claims about strict rules, isolation from outside contact, and intense control over daily life, which contributed to the broader public reaction. It became a major cultural moment, drawing tens of millions of viewers across its episodes and sparking widespread discussion online and in the media. The fallout was immediate and massive. Some public figures, including John Legend, chose to appear in the series and later spoke publicly about their reasons for participating. He also addressed the documentary's impact in interviews and on social media after its release, adding further attention to the already explosive situation. Robert's ex-wife, Drea Kelly, also spoke publicly in interviews, describing her experiences and what life in the relationship was like away from the spotlight. Her accounts added another layer to the growing public conversation around the case. The Mute R. Kelly campaign gained major traction online, spreading quickly across social media and pushing a wave of boycotts across the entertainment industry. Streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music began reducing visibility of his music in playlists and recommendations, signaling a major shift in public reception. RCA Records also cut ties with him during this period. Robert responded with a lengthy, emotional track titled I Admit, where he strongly denied wrongdoing while also making statements that drew heavy public interpretation and debate. In July 2019, he was arrested on federal charges involving racketeering and allegations related to a long-running pattern of criminal conduct spanning decades, according to prosecutors. They alleged a structured system involving recruitment, control, and movement of individuals across state lines, along with claims of coercive and abusive behavior over many years. The New York trial in Brooklyn in 2021 lasted about 6 weeks and included testimony from multiple witnesses and accusers, many using pseudonyms for privacy. They described long-term manipulation, control, and abusive environments that prosecutors argued formed the basis of a criminal enterprise case. After deliberation, The jury convicted him on all counts, including racketeering and multiple related charges, resulting in a 30-year sentence. A separate 2022 trial in Chicago focused on additional allegations tied to recorded material from earlier years and accusations of misconduct involving minors. That case included testimony from individuals who described meeting him when they were teenagers and later becoming involved in legal proceedings tied to those allegations. The jury ultimately convicted him on multiple counts while acquitting or not reaching verdicts on others, and he received a lengthy additional sentence that largely ran alongside his earlier federal case. The sentencing judge described the conduct as systematic, repeated over many years, and carried out with disregard for harm, according to the court's findings. The impact on his career was immediate and severe. After the major 2021 and 2022 convictions, his mainstream career effectively collapsed. No label backing, no touring, and no traditional industry support. His music was also pulled back or deprioritized on several streaming platforms during this period. Ironically, there was a short-term spike in public interest following the court rulings, with streaming numbers and catalog sales briefly increasing as the story went viral across social media and news coverage. Tracks like Ignition, Remix, and I Believe I Can Fly saw renewed attention during that period. Even while incarcerated, reports suggested he remained musically active in some form. In March 2025, a remix tied to a viral social media trend circulated online, reportedly connected to recent prison-recorded material. His attorney framed it as evidence that he was still creatively engaged despite being in custody. By early 2026, short audio clips allegedly featuring him singing over contemporary instrumentals began circulating on social media, drawing commentary from industry figures and producers. Some well-known names reacted online, with a few acknowledging his influence in R&B history, while also sparking debate about his legacy. He has also claimed in prison interviews to have continued writing music during incarceration, stating he has developed a large body of unreleased material and describing music as something he cannot stop creating despite his circumstances. Most of what circulates online as new R. Kelly music from prison, including full projects labeled like A Prisoner's Prayer or Holy Jesus, is widely identified as AI-generated or fan-made content. Fact-checkers and media outlets have debunked several viral prison music videos, pointing out unnatural audio, distorted visuals, and synthetic vocals that don't match verified recordings. In one case, a 2022 unofficial release titled I Admit. It briefly appeared online, but it was not authorized and was later removed, with his team distancing themselves from it. Throughout his incarceration, Robert has consistently maintained claims of innocence, describing the allegations as misrepresentation, media distortion, or opportunistic narratives amplified through social media. His legal filings and public statements have repeatedly challenged the scope of the charges and the use of racketeering laws in his case, while prosecutors and courts have upheld the convictions through appeals. In a March 2025 prison-related audio appearance, snippets of older songs reportedly surfaced, including short performances of well-known tracks. He described music as a lifelong passion and stated he continues writing regularly, claiming to have developed a large catalog of unreleased material while incarcerated. Public reaction remains deeply divided. Supporters interpret his continued musical output as resilience and expression, while critics view it as tone-deaf given the seriousness of the case and prior jury findings. Across social media, misinformation and recycled clips continue to circulate, often sparking confusion around his status, releases, or alleged activity from prison. As of now, his projected release date remains set for December 21, 2045, with prior appeals and emergency motions consistently denied by the courts. Despite that, older viral moments, like the 2019 cigar lounge footage, continue to resurface online, keeping his past presence in public discussion even as he remains incarcerated. And that's the end of this breakdown. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment with what you want covered next.